Heavenly Father, as we gather here this morning, we say thank you for all the great blessings you've given to us. Thank you for the privilege of living in this great land. And now, as we tackle the business of the county, we pray that you will be in our midst. All these things we ask in the name of the Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Dick. Is there any public comment concerning the agenda items this morning? All right, hearing none, we'll move right into it. Looks like first up is going to be highway long-term plan budgets. Who's going to present that? Okay. Mr. Peck. Like this.
I drew the short straw. If you want to follow along, I printed out a long-term budget that I have been working with council members and then also Mr. Peters, and based on the recommendations from our bridge inventory assessment and also our pavement asset management plan that has been approved by Purdue University. So what I've done is I've gone through here and listed projects that the county would like to do, and then with input with the commissioners. I'll explain everything on the details of this, and then Mr. Frey will explain why we had set the priorities for this project. The first one is the large culvert replacement. We have 3 of them that I'm looking at replacing next year. My goal is every year we kind of do an inventory and replace these large culverts until we get caught up. If you turn to this sheet here, the first sheet is culvert 1914. This is down at 950 south between at least 700 and 650 west. Obviously, we've got wing walls collapsed, and Mr. Fullwiler brought this to my attention. This project is not part of a legal drain, so we'll have to acquire some additional right-of-way so that when I put a culvert in, it's going to be widened up for the future for farm traffic and not have a situation where we're narrowing down. The next one is culvert 0296. This is at 700 north and 100 east. Obviously, the walls have fallen in, and I don't have a picture of it, but part of the bridge tech has dropped down a foot. So I'm looking at replacing that project. And those 2 will be in my base bid. The next one is on Overcoat Road. I think a lot of people have driven that and seen that drop off about 20 feet. There's a culvert that sticks out beyond that. The bottom of that is completely rusted out. Water is getting back into the roadway and starting to deteriorate that roadway. So I'm looking at those projects next year to bid and hopefully construct. The next one is Bridge 182. This has been identified as priority number 3 on the asset management plan for the bridge. This one is the one that recommend replacement of this. This bridge is right here on 750 east, right where it comes into 700 south. There are triple culverts through there. The joints are pulling apart. We have one area where the bank is starting to, or the roadway is starting to deteriorate. So that is one that I'm going to have the consultant give me a proposal, and we're going to get the design work done next year, and then hopefully construct that in 2020. Bridge 79, we have decided not to fund that project. This is located just north of I-74 and 100 west. And as you as I presented a few meetings before, this is part of the overflow or bypass roads that will be paralleling 231. What I've given in this exhibit is just 3 alignments that I'm looking at. The bottom alignment is option 3. That one will allow us to acquire most of the right-of-way off the gravel pit, which I think John has had some initial discussions, and they would be willing to work with us on the right-of-way. The other 2 will impact some wetlands, so we'd have a huge environmental problem there that we'd have to mitigate. So I'm trying to avoid the mitigation. So we're going to try to fund that down the road sometime. The next one is Memorial Drive. The frontage roads that we're talking about, we've got Bridge 79 here. We've been paving 100 West. We've been having conversation with NDOT about the congestion on 231 and trying to get traffic over to 47 and 32. So we have a consultant looking at doing a preliminary study on the alignment of Memorial Drive and the bridge, and so they're studying that. The commissioners would like to go ahead and proceed with the design. We would do that the second half of next year, with the balance of the design work happening at the beginning of 2020. And then working with Mr. Peters, the right-of-way acquisition that we had to acquire, we're going to push that back another year. I think that is going to be 2022. The next thing that we've got is, again, based on the bridge inventory. I've got basically 24 bridges that we need to beef up the scour protection. Basically, it's been pulled away. The original protection or rock was not large enough, so we're in the process of starting to expose some of those foundations. So I need to button those up, and if we don't do that, after every rain event, I have to inspect the first 10 and basically report back to the state that they are still functioning adequately. So we're going to go ahead and get those fixed next year, the 10, and then following up with the other, I believe, 14 the following year. There's been a lot of complaints on 75, which is the Newcore Road Bridge, and then also 59, which is the Lyle Creek Bridge, just west of Darlington. What I want to do there, and I've been working with Milestone, is going and replacing the approach pavement, because we're starting to, that's deteriorating away, and we need to get that stabilized and so we can allow for the semi-traffic to traverse those. On Lyle Creek, the east side of that bridge, the problem that we've got there, why you've got that big hump, is we have a concrete approach pavement, and that has been undermined based on how the bridge was designed. All the water is coming to the east and undermining that slab. So what I'm going to need to do is go in there and grout that those void areas, and then we're going to have to go back probably about 60, 70 feet on the, at least on the east side, dig down, bring up with compacted stone, and then put asphalt pavement. The other side of the bridge, the west side, we're still going to have to do that because we have problems in that situation too, but not as severe. The next one is our bridge inventory. This year we paid about $212,000. 80% of that is reimbursed by the state. Next year is basically taking phase one, making sure that I am doing what we need to do so that price goes down. Then the following year we get into phase two, which the price goes back up for all the requirements they have to do with the inspection. And then again, the following years it drops down. Then 2022, we're back again. It's a 4-year cycle, so we're back up to that 212. So again, just trying to get you guys to see how we're going to be cash flowing it down the road. On the bridge summary, we've got 4 or 3 more bridges that need basically the decks replaced, and that mainly means going down about 2 inches and doing a deck overlay. There's a guardrail we have to address. There's some of the scour that we'll have to address. So those projects are, we're going, since we're in a budget, we're not going to be able to fund those. Especially Bridge 142, I'll have to keep my eye on that. See, right now everything's stable, but down the road that might become a issue that we're going to have to address. The next one is the tracks overpass. And as I talked before, I was looking at 650 as a corridor through there. That was actually going to be a secondary corridor through there. You know, we had talked, I think that was going to be 10, 15, 20 years out. However, the state of Indiana came out with this tracks program, which basically the state of Indiana is funding, no federal funding, and CSX is going to fund trying to do some track crossing eliminations. So I went ahead and had our consultant help me put together, we made an application to CSX. My gut feeling is about 10, 15, 20% chance that CSX would support it. We got a letter back, CSX is going to support the project. So our odds, I think, going up about 50-50. So what I provided in this exhibit is kind of a blow up of what the intersection of 231 and 650. We'd have an overpass over the tracks and 231, making provisions that NDOT's going to 4-lane 231. We'll have a kind of a mini off-ramp so people can get in and off the 231 and 650. We have the school. I present this to North Montgomery School. The superintendent is very positive of this because all their students would be able to turn right out of the school, help create more of a safe environment for the school. We also presented this plan to the Sheriff's Department of what we're looking at up at this location and also Memorial Drive. And they are very interested, mainly for Memorial Drive, is be able to have access to the north part of the county. So hopefully this will become projects, it's, a short-term, long-term. We're just going to try to chip away at that so that we eventually get that project completed. The next one is Newcore Bridge. I've been talking to NDOT because we've got Newcore Bridge, very steep grade coming into 136. NDOT was analyzing that with possibly doing an overpass over 136, What that would require us, our Bridge 75, we'd have to elevate it up about 5 to 7 feet. NDOT came back to me, they said based on their funding, they would not be able to fund this in the, I guess in the 5 to 10 year range, but they asked that if the next LPA funding would come out, that we would consider doing that project, which again is probably it's an 80-20 split there. So I am getting a consultant on board with the commissioner's agreement. I'm going to apply that for our LPA. That project or that process takes about 5 years. So if we get that awarded, we're not going to be building this until 5 years down the road. But I wanted to bring it up to your attention that I'm looking at that. The next one is the capital road improvements and widening. County Road 100 West from 500 South going into New Market. We only have about 33 feet of right-of-way there. We are going to have to acquire additional right-of-way, utility relocations, culvert relocations to be able to widen that. So that one will require myself to hire a consultant to put plans together. We had also addressed the intersection of 100 West and 500 South to make that turning movement in a better situation than it is today. Again, that one is on the radar, but we don't have funds for that. The next one is Airport Road. What we're looking at there is west of the entrance to the airport, we have a real tight curve there. We're looking at smoothing that curve out, again requiring some additional right-of-way that we'd have to acquire to be able to pay that project. We're going to have consultants, going to be a proposal, so at least we can get the plans done, and so that when we have the funds, we can pull the trigger and get that off and running. The next page, we have community crossing that's due the end of this month. Last year we did about 12 miles of road. We got $670,000 from the state. We've had to put in a little over $950,000 to do that project. Obviously, this funding this year, we're not going to be able to fund that much. So the state is going to do a 75-25 split on that, up to $1 million. So one of the projects I've identified is 500 South, from 500 East to New Ross. What that's going to require us is widen the road. Right now it's about 19 feet wide. So we're going to have to come about 18 inches on either side, dig down, bring the base up, and put the asphalt base in. That is the first number, the $365,000. The next number down is basically overlaying the entire roadway. So that takes us up to a grand total of just, well, $1,230,000. The county's match would be on that is about just over $300,000. That's assuming that the state will fund us up to $1 million. Again, last year we asked for $1 million. We got $670,000. So it could be that we'd have to fund more than the $306,000. The following year, I'm looking up continuing the 100 West from 700 down to 400. Also do 580 and 400 through there, and then also 700 to 231. Again, that one will take us up to a total of $1 million of work, and then our portion would be around $265,000. So I anticipate doing that submittal next year. if everybody's in agreement. The next one is Country Club Road. I'm sorry, I put Bridge. That one is we're in through the LPA process. We just are wrapping up our first year of that project. Again, it's another 5-year project. Basically, it's a stabilizing the slope, excavating down, putting in new pavement, and on that project, you know, it's a total project. From what we paid this year, it's almost a $5 million project for a quarter of a mile. That one concerns me that we're spending that much because the county's portion of that is $1.3 million. So I'm looking at that one to make sure we're spending the money in the right place. Capital improvements. I think the last time I talked to you, the state is really putting pressure on the counties now to address drainage on all of our chip and seal, pavement, gravel roads. Right now, obviously, you got our gravel roads. We got dirt and grass up higher than the road. We can't get water off the road. We have ditches that haven't been addressed or cleaned for years. So what I was looking at, investigating equipment. I actually looked at things in Germany, Australia, and lo and behold, I found something here in Indiana. I've given this to you. It's actually a berm cutting that we can actually cut that berm and it throws it into the farmer's field. The next 2 pages back is actually the actual ditch cutting equipment. This equipment portion of it is made in Brazil, Indiana. Some of the components are made in Ohio. Everything is manufactured and assembled in Bloomington, Indiana. That is going to require, each one of these pieces of equipment is $200,000. We'd also require a tractor to pull that, since equipment is extremely heavy. And basically you put it in idle gear, you have a joystick controller into the cab, and then you operate the machinery there. You basically are going at creep gear, so we can get about anywhere from, they're saying, 2 to 5 miles an hour. Based on that, ISC to do all of our ditches, we're in a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years, we're going to be touching a ditch out there. Obviously, these will not be going in front of anybody's residence. Otherwise, we're going to be paying for windows and siding on houses. I've been contacted. We're going to have Phil and myself and Jeremy are looking at, I think September 13th, they're looking at, there's several counties in Indiana that has this equipment. We're going to look at it, visit it, see how it works, talk to the people that actually run it, maintain it, to make sure this is what we want to use for this county. When I was down there at their manufacturing facility, they had a piece of equipment, this equipment from Posey, Indiana, or Posey County. They've had that for 20 years. They just came in to have the cutting head and the engine overhauled for the first time. So I am looking at this equipment. We're looking at a lease, looking at government lease options on this. So we're not hit with the capital improvement. So this should last us a very long time. Jeremy is also addressing clearing our right-of-way. Again, that's part of what NDOT is going to mandate us to do to keep our getting funding. Jeremy's looking at a couple more boom mowers. He purchased one last year. It's been very successful. We're going to continue that, probably a lease, and then a couple more dump trucks. Again, that's more of operations. I'll have Jeremy address that. But I want to just go over the capital improvements. And I think at this point, turn it over to John to explain why we set these priorities.
Well, do you want to go through their budget first? You want to go through the rest of the highway budget? Because I'd like to go into mine once I start talking. They're ours. I guess we could. Right.
Did you just want to start with 1176, Fund 1176, or what? What fund do you want me to display?
Where did you start? I guess you've had discussions with Jeff about the Q Bridge. Is that right? And I guess what we talked about, what we spent was what you thought you were willing to do to keep that at a 1 point, was it 2.7 this year? Or 1.6 with the million that's in cash? Yeah.
You want me to talk about funding all these things that you just walked through? All that, and we'll detail after that. As always, thanks for the opportunity to be here. On the fiscal plan that we've been through before, I'm going to pass those down, John. If you guys each want to take one of these. As we looked at, that fiscal plan is allocating your resources, how it is that you're going to do it. Gives you that opportunity to weigh what projects are more important, etc. In the fiscal plan that you had before that we talked about the last time I was here, it had the historical Cume Bridge rate at 2.85 cents. It did not have the income tax increase that we talked about the last time. It also had the growth factor from the previous year that has been updated since. And I updated the highway budget and the local road and street budget for the state's new estimates for 2019. NVH revenues are going to go down, local road and street revenues are going to go up. The NVH revenues are going down a lot more than the local road and streets going up. But for the fiscal plan in total, we looked at also imposing what the commissioners approved of a 7.5 cent rate for the Cume Bridge, only for the year of 2019, which mostly makes them whole from the 2 years of taxes that they didn't collect in 17 and 18. As we talked about last time, you guys may or may not be able to afford that. Since that point in time of that meeting, you have gotten good news back from the DLGF that they recognize your error from 18. They're not going to ask you to repay that 700 and some thousand that was in your favor. there's 700 and some thousand that you have, that otherwise you might have had to pay back. If we look at that 7.5 cent rate only in 19, and then cut it back to the 2.85 cent rate that you had in previous years, the sheet that you've got before you, the front page that has the colors on it, is basically our attempt of putting 15 pounds of projects into 4 2-pound bags. And you know, this is going to be an ongoing thing that you're going to have, as Jim talked about. If you have certain bridges deteriorate, they're going to jump to the front of the line. But for this point in time, to look at allocating those, we looked at the funds of Cume Bridge, which we have in purple, the Highway Fund in green, the Wheel Tax Fund in blue, the Local Road and Street Fund in orange, and then the unfunded projects in red. So as we look at, based on Jim's sheet that he presented to you with the priorities, trying to get things funded here, out of the Cume Bridge, looking at the Country Club Bridge, which is your first line up there, Fund 8530. As Jim said, this is an 80-20 split project, but also you guys previously have established a fund to start accumulating money toward that project. And there should be about $350,000 in there with contributions made in 2018 out of the Local Road and Street Fund and the MVH Fund. And you'll see that little denotion with got an asterisk for the footnote down below that says it's an 80-20 project. And then the caret talks about the fund balance that's existing there. Since that fund is set up, I assume you will expend those monies before you start to hit the Cume Bridge Fund. So those expenditures, based on the current estimates, get you through 2021 just out of the cash reserve that's laid back in that fund at the end of 2018, assuming the highway turns over those other monies denoted down there. So in 2022, you'd be expected to pay out $189,000 toward that project, and in 2023, $419,000. Then that project would be funded in total, all that from the Cume Bridge. The bridge inventory and inspection, again, we've laid out the expenditures between 19 and 22. There would obviously be other expenditures 23 and forward, but we don't have that detail yet. Bridge 182 gets funded in 2019 and 2020, completely out of the cumulative bridge fund at that level. Large culverts,